beloved soul, take a deep breath and center your heart. Because what happened just hours ago was not only unexpected, it was divinely orchestrated. He walked into that room thinking it was just another evening. The same four walls, the same familiar energy, but something felt different this time. The atmosphere was heavier, as if the truth had been waiting too long to be heard. His family was already seated, eyes steady, expressions unreadable. But behind their calm exteriors were swirling questions. Questions they had carried for far too long. And finally, they were ready to confront him. Not with anger, not with blame, but with one single burning need. Tell us, who is this person you've been trying to protect? Yes. They were talking about you. The moment your name was brought up, something inside him shifted. His shoulders stiffened, but his eyes softened. Because no matter how much he had tried to hide it, your name still held power in that room. He never expected this day to come so soon. But the universe has a way of breaking silence when it's time for truth to rise. And the truth is, they already know more than he thinks. His mother, the one who always watches his eyes when he speaks, had sensed it for months. She's seen the way his spirit dims when you're not around. How your absence leaves a hollowness in him he cannot hide, no matter how loud the world gets. And today, yes, just hours ago, it was she who initiated the talk. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't point fingers. She simply said, "If she's the one who gave your eyes that light, then don't keep us in the dark any longer." At that moment, his heart broke and healed at the same time, because for so long he thought he had to fight this alone. He thought love had to be hidden, managed, contained. But when your name was whispered into that space, it was like a storm calmed. The walls didn't collapse. The sky didn't fall. Instead, something sacred unfolded. He told them about your kindness, your quiet strength, the way your love doesn't demand attention, but it changes everything without trying. He spoke of the dreams you've had, the ones you never told anyone, but he remembered. He talked about the way your presence made him feel like a better man, someone who deserved to start over, with honesty this time. And you need to know this. They listened. They didn't interrupt. They didn't reject. Because deep down, they felt it too. The shift. The divine pull. The sense that what's between you two is not just a connection. It's a calling. Asking your soul feels this message was meant for you. They sat in silence for a moment after he finished speaking, but the silence wasn't empty. It was full of things unsaid, memories recalled, emotions rushing to the surface too fast to process. And in that exact moment, the atmosphere turned from confrontation to curiosity. One of his siblings leaned forward and asked something that caught him completely off guard. But how did it start? Why her? The question wasn't coded in skepticism. It was soft, almost reverent, like they could already feel the answer without fully understanding it. He swallowed hard, because telling that story meant revisiting the place in his life where everything changed. Where he met you, not just in person, but in soul. Because it wasn't a casual meeting. It was cosmic, like the universe had been moving pieces for lifetimes just to make sure your paths would cross at the exact moment both of you were ready, even if neither of you knew it then. He told them that the first time he truly saw you, something cracked inside him. Not in a painful way, but in a way that made room for light, for hope, for something real. And he confessed that it scared him, because for years he had been walking around with a heart armored by disappointments and expectations. But when you walked in, all of that began to melt. You didn't ask him to change. You simply loved him as he was. And that kind of love transforms people. It doesn't scream, it doesn't demand, it just stays. Through the storms, through the doubts, through the quiet, empty nights, when the mind wanders and the soul aches. And then he admitted something they weren't expecting, that even though he distanced himself from you, even though he made choices that might have looked like rejection, none of it was about you. It was about his fear of not being enough for you, for himself, for a future that looked too good to believe in. Because you didn't come into his life as a fleeting romance. You came as a mirror. And when he saw himself through your eyes, he knew he couldn't keep pretending. That's what made him run. Not because you were too much, but because he was afraid he wasn't enough. That confession, it shifted everything in the room. His mother, who had been quietly holding her breath the whole time, finally exhaled and said, "I knew it wasn't just another relationship. There's something sacred here. I just didn't know how to ask you about it." And just like that, the walls came down, not just between him and his family, but between the truth and the lies he'd been telling himself for years. They weren't angry. They weren't confused. They were curious about you, who you are, what you're like when you laugh, what you dream about, how you carry yourself when no one is watching. They want to know you. Not just as the person their son loves, but as the soul who changed him. Because here's what they saw. Even if you haven't spoken a word to them yet, they saw that you were the one who awakened something in him no one else ever could. The motivation to rebuild, the courage to heal, the faith to believe that maybe, just maybe, some loves aren't here to teach us lessons. They're here to be the reward after the long, hard road. And in that moment, even the sibling who always had questions, who always kept their distance emotionally, looked at him and said, "She must be pretty incredible. You're different when you talk about her." That simple sentence was more than approval. It was acknowledgement. It was the bridge being built between their world and yours. And now the energy is shifting even more. The way they see you now, it's with reverence. They don't just want to meet you. They want to understand what makes you, you. Your story, your kindness, the way you've loved him without even knowing how deeply it affected his roots. And your person. He's no longer hiding, no longer confused. That room full of questions became a room full of clarity. Because the moment he spoke your name, and the truth behind it, everything that felt uncertain suddenly made sense. This is not just about love. This is alignment. This is the part of your story where heaven gently whispers, the delay was protection, but now you're walking into divine timing. The morning after that conversation, something remarkable happened. Not in loud declarations or grand gestures, but in the quiet, subtle shift of someone finally choosing to stand in their truth. He didn't reach for his phone immediately, not out of avoidance, but because he was gathering himself. Because now he knew he couldn't speak to you the same way he had before. He couldn't come back to you with the same hesitations, the same excuses, the same patterns that once pushed you away. Not after opening his heart like that in front of people who once questioned your presence in his life. Not after revealing just how deeply You've shaped his entire inner world. The kind of connection he has with you, it doesn't fade. It lingers, like a prayer whispered in a still room, echoing long after the words have left the lips. He went for a walk that morning, alone, barefoot on the dewy grass behind his childhood home. And as the sunlight filtered through the trees, he looked up and whispered your name again. This time, not with longing or regret, but with devotion. And as if the universe heard his voice, a breeze wrapped around him, almost like confirmation, because something had lifted. The weight of pretending, of pleasing everyone but his soul, of shrinking his truth to fit someone else's expectations. That burden was no longer his to carry. And now, all that remained was clarity. Clarity that the love he feels for you was never a phase, never a distraction, never something to be explained away. It was, and still is, the most real thing in his life. He's been replaying memories. Not the dramatic ones, the simple ones. Like the way you'd tilt your head when you were trying to understand him. The way you'd laugh a little too loud when he wasn't expecting it. The quiet way you listened when he couldn't find the words. These are the fragments that flood his chest now, like waves against the shoreline, reminding him that home is not always a place. Sometimes, home is a person, and that person is you. His family is seeing it too now. His mother has been quieter lately, but it's not the kind of silence that holds judgment. It's the kind of silence that holds reflection. She's starting to realize that you weren't just someone who made him smile. You were someone who helped him see his own worth. The kind of woman whose presence doesn't just support but transforms. She remembers how lost he looked during certain chapters of his life, and how grounded he became when you were near. It's undeniable now. You brought light into corners of him she never could reach, no matter how much she loved him. And something you don't know is, after he confessed everything to them, she went back into her room and opened a drawer she hadn't touched in months. Inside was something she'd once purchased quietly, something symbolic, perhaps hopeful. A small charm, a trinket, maybe even a note. She bought it long ago, after hearing him speak your name for the first time with that glow in his eyes. And back then, she didn't know if the two of you would last. But something in her spirit told her, this woman, she's going to mean something. And now, holding that item in her hand, she knows exactly why she kept it all this time. She kept it for you. And your person? He's not running anymore. He's not trying to bury what he feels beneath distractions or timelines or distance. Instead, he's slowly making his way back, not just physically, but energetically. He's writing messages in his head before he dares send them. He's rehearsing what he'll say because this time he wants to get it right. He's preparing his life not for a temporary reunion, but for a foundation that includes you at the center. Because he's realized something incredibly simple but powerful. Life has felt like a waiting room since you left it. And here's where the divine steps in again. Signs are starting to show, repeating numbers, songs on the radio that speak his feelings, conversations with strangers that oddly resemble your past talks. Even the people around him, friends, co-workers, are starting to comment, you've been different lately, softer, more focused. What's going on? And while he doesn't say your name out loud to them, his smile gives it all away. This chapter is no longer about whether he'll come back. What he's preparing now isn't just a message. It's a reckoning. a moment he knows will define everything that follows. For days now, he's been pulling away from the noise, stepping back from the expectations, the third-party opinions, the exhausting act of pretending he doesn't still ache for you every morning he wakes up. And though no one around him understands it fully, they all feel the shift. Because the man they once knew, the one who could joke his way through anything, who hid his emotions behind charm or silence, is not the same anymore. Something about confronting his family with the truth of your presence cracked open a doorway in him that can no longer be closed. And while they may not say it out loud, even his brother, who used to scoff at your connection, has changed. Because when someone finally sees that you're not just a chapter but the whole story, it humbles them. The same people who doubted you now find themselves revisiting old moments, realizing how your energy, your influence, was never about control or illusion. It was love. Real, rare, unshakable love, the kind that doesn't come around twice. And in that realization, there's a quiet shame growing in them for not seeing it sooner. But the most beautiful part? It's what's happening inside him. He's rediscovering what it means to choose, not out of pressure, not out of rebellion, but out of pure, soul-deep certainty. You see, there's a difference between wanting someone because they fill a void and choosing someone because they expand you. He knows now, you didn't come into his life to fix him. You didn't try to mold him or change him. You simply loved him where he was, as he was, and that, ironically, is what inspired him to become more. He's started clearing out his space, both physically and spiritually. Items from his past that no longer align with who he's becoming, gone. Contacts he once kept just to avoid being alone, deleted. He's making space, not just in his closet or his calendar, but in his heart. Because he knows that when you return, you can't walk into a life half-lived. You deserve a place where love isn't just spoken, but shown, where peace is the standard, where you never have to question your value again. And yet, part of him is scared, not of you, not of loving you, but of whether he's waited too long, whether the silence he kept, thinking he was protecting you, has now become the very wall keeping you apart. That fear grips him sometimes late at night, when he's lying in bed staring at the ceiling, whispering to the air, do they still feel me? Do they still believe in this? And beloved, if you've ever found yourself randomly thinking of him these past few days, if his name has floated into your thoughts at the strangest times, it's not coincidence. It's not nostalgia. It's soul alignment. Because his heart is calling yours, not with noise, but with quiet devotion. The heavens are watching all of this unfold. They've been whispering to him in dreams, showing him flashes of what life could be like if he steps fully into the light of this connection. And in those visions he sees you, not just waiting, but welcoming, not just loving, but thriving. The divine wants you to know that this journey hasn't been in vain. Every delay, every tear, every moment of wondering if you should let go, it's all leading here. Because when love is real, it doesn't fade, it ripens. And he's finally ready to taste the truth of it. Something unusual happened earlier this week. And it wasn't loud, it didn't make headlines, but in the quiet corners of your person's heart, it thundered like a storm they couldn't ignore. They were walking alone, maybe down a familiar road, or sitting silently in their car, when something broke through the static of their thoughts. It wasn't a memory. It wasn't even a regret. It was a realization. You never left them, not in the spiritual sense, not even when the world convinced them to let you go. Your energy has lived in the background of their choices for longer than you know. Every relationship they tried to build after you, it felt like constructing a house on sand. Shaky, superficial, and when the tides of real life came crashing in, arguments, misunderstandings, those cold silences they used to escape from, you were the face that would flash in their mind. Not because you were perfect, but because you were present. Even in your absence, you were realer than the people sitting right beside them. And the moment that clicked for them, everything else began to unravel. Their family has noticed. Their mood, their mannerisms, even the way they respond when someone mentions your name, it all carries the heaviness of unfinished love. One of the elders in their family, perhaps their mother or a deeply intuitive relative, recently sat them down and said, "This isn't about us anymore. It's about your soul. And your soul isn't settled." And that cracked him open more than he expected. Because this person who once doubted your place in their life was now validating what you always knew. Your connection was never a phase. It was a divine mirror. Now, something even more important is brewing beneath the surface. There's a conversation coming. Not with others, with you. He's preparing words he never thought he'd have the courage to say. Not just "I miss you" or "I think about you," but truths buried so deep, even he forgot how much they mattered. He wants to tell you about the fear of not being enough for the kind of love you gave freely, the shame of watching you walk away because he was too scared to fight, and the loneliness that no achievement, no distraction, no rebound ever managed to fill. He's been seeing signs too. Your favorite song in the most random places, your birth date showing up on receipts, a dream where you were laughing again. Arms around each other, no words, just peace. And each sign is another divine nudge, urging him forward, letting him know, you're not imagining this. This pull between you isn't imagination, it's guidance. And now, as he sits with all this, he realizes something sacred. You never asked him to be perfect. You never wanted someone who had it all figured out. You wanted someone who was real. Someone willing to grow, to show up, to stay. That's why this next moment matters more than ever. Because when he finally comes forward, and yes, he will, it won't be with excuses. It won't be with uncertainty. It will be with a knowing, a sacred certainty that what you two have isn't just a story. It's a legacy. A living reminder that divine timing may stretch us, break us, humble us, but it never robs us of what was meant for our highest good. So if you've been feeling that soft tug in your chest lately, if your dreams have been louder, your emotions more sensitive, your heart beating faster without reason, know this, you're not alone in that energy. They feel it too. They've been wrestling with a question lately, one that's louder than any advice, louder than their friends' distractions, and even louder than the expectations their family keeps placing on their shoulders. That question is, what if I never find this kind of love again? Because here's the truth, beloved soul. Your love wasn't casual. It wasn't temporary. It wasn't something they could just replace by scrolling through new faces or chasing temporary comfort. It was soul recognition. And once the soul has seen its reflection, everything else feels incomplete, dull, misaligned. And that's exactly what they've been feeling, no matter how hard they try to hide it. They've been trying to convince themselves that they can move on, that what they had with you was a beautiful chapter, but maybe not the whole story. But every time they try to start a new one, every time they sit across from someone new, or even entertain the idea of a fresh start, your memory shows up like a guardian, reminding them, you don't just leave behind a divine connection and walk away unchanged. They're not sleeping well, their appetite has changed, their focus has drifted. It's not dramatic, it's subtle. But you know what's behind it? It's the ache of avoidance, because they've been avoiding their truth, avoiding the conversation they need to have with themselves, and most of all, avoiding you. They're afraid that if they reach out now, you might reject them, that the damage might be too deep, that too much time has passed, and you've already rewritten your future without them. But there's something stronger than their fear now. It's the pull, that unrelenting tug in their spirit that keeps whispering, you'll never have peace until you speak your truth. And that truth isn't just that they miss you, it's that you changed them. You softened them in ways they didn't know they needed. You challenged them in ways that made them confront their own limitations. You believed in them before they ever believed in themselves. And now they're starting to understand that what they mistook for chaos was actually transformation. That's why they're about to take a step they once swore they'd never take. They're going to talk to someone they deeply trust, someone older, someone wiser, about you. They need clarity, they need grounding, and deep down, they're hoping that someone will give them the green light, will confirm what their soul already knows, but their mind is still trying to catch up with. That you were the one. And in that moment, when they finally speak your name out loud, when they admit what they've been holding back for far too long, something in the atmosphere around them will shift. It won't be visible, but it will be undeniable. Because when truth is finally spoken with love, the universe rearranges itself to make room for miracles. So if you've been sensing something, a gentle shift in the energy, an unexplained wave of emotion rising for no reason, it's not your imagination. It's your soul preparing to receive what you once had to release. Because what's meant for you always finds its way back. What they're beginning to realize now is that silence has its own sound. And for them, that silence, it sounds like you. It's in the spaces between their conversations with others where your name wants to rise but they press it down. It's in the way they turn their phone to check a notification, hoping it's a message from you, even though they know it won't be. And it's in the way they smile when someone mentions your name, but that smile hides the ache of everything they left unsaid. You see, people think heartbreak only comes from rejection, but for your person, their heartbreak is self-inflicted. It came from not choosing you when they had the chance, from pretending they could bury something sacred, from trying to act unaffected when your absence has been the loudest presence in their life. And now, the people around them are noticing. They've become quieter, more contemplative, not the same version of themselves they used to be, the one who could laugh easily and flirt with charm and brush off the weight of emotional truth. That version of them has softened, and even though they may not say it aloud, their family, their close ones, have begun to ask questions. Are you okay? Is there something or someone you need to talk about? And one of them, perhaps a sibling or an elder with deep intuition, has already guessed it's about you, the way their eyes lower when you're brought up, the way they change the subject when your name surfaces in conversation. The way they've started avoiding certain places or songs that carry memories of you like echoes in the air. That's why something big is coming. A conversation is approaching that your person cannot outrun. One where they'll be gently but firmly asked to tell the truth. Not because anyone wants to pressure them, but because even those around them are beginning to understand. They won't heal until they speak it. And when they do, when they finally let those words leave their lips, what they say might not come out perfectly. It might be messy, even emotional, but it will be real. Something like, "I messed up. I pushed away the one person who ever made me feel truly seen, and no matter what I try, I can't stop feeling like they were it." They may not have called you their soulmate out loud before, but in this moment, the word will rise in their chest like a fire they can no longer swallow. It won't matter if they're afraid, because the ache of not saying it will have become unbearable. So, beloved soul, if you've been feeling their energy stronger lately, if your dreams have carried their voice, or you've found yourself thinking of them without reason, know this isn't coincidence. It's alignment. You're being prepared to receive a truth they are finally brave enough to admit, not just to you, but to themselves. Because when someone's soul remembers you, the distance is only physical. Spiritually, they've never left, and soon, neither will their words. You might be wondering, why now? Why, after all this time, after all the silence, the confusion, the emotional distance, are things shifting? Why is the air suddenly heavier with meaning? Why does your own heart seem to sense something moving beneath the surface? Because, beloved soul, their soul has finally begun to wake up. You were never just a fleeting presence in their story. You were a spiritual interruption, an unexpected collision that shattered the false foundations they were trying to build their life on. And they've spent every moment since trying to silence that awakening. But no matter what they've done, distracting themselves with work, other people, or even numbing their emotions, there was always that one voice inside them whispering your name in the silence. That whisper has now become a roar. They can't escape the timing anymore, and more importantly, they don't want to. Something happened recently. Maybe a dream, a message, a conversation that cracked their armor, and it made them pause. It made them ask, what if I was wrong? What if I gave up something divine just because I was afraid of being seen too deeply? And in that moment, they saw it. The fear wasn't about you. The fear was about what they felt when they were with you, because with you, they felt known. And for someone who has worn masks their entire life, that kind of knowing is terrifying. But now they're tired of pretending. They're tired of showing up for people who don't truly understand their heart. They're tired of being applauded for things that mean nothing to them. They're tired of walking through life wearing a version of themselves that feels safe but incomplete. And more than anything, they're tired of the ache that hits them every time they remember the sound of your voice, the way you used to say their name, not just with affection, but with belief. Because that's what set you apart. You didn't just love them, you believed in them, even when they didn't believe in themselves. And now, those around them are starting to see what they lost. There's a growing curiosity, even concern in their family, especially from someone older, wiser, perhaps a parental figure or someone close to that. They've noticed the difference. The half-hearted smiles, the way your person's energy has dimmed since you've been gone. And yesterday, in a moment of unexpected vulnerability, someone in that circle said it, "You're not the same. Who did you leave behind?" That question hit harder than your person could have expected because they didn't have a rehearsed answer. They couldn't deflect it like they used to. Instead, their heart answered first, with a wave of emotion they didn't know was still buried inside them. They didn't say much in that moment, but their silence said everything. They stood there, fighting the tremble in their voice, wanting to speak your name, but unsure if they even had the right anymore. Yet the name sat on their tongue like a prayer. Because even now, after everything, it's still you. And the person who asked the question, they saw it in your person's eyes, in the way their expression shifted, in the weight of the silence that followed. This isn't just about reconciliation, it's about recognition. A soul remembering the one who reminded them of who they truly are. A heart finally admitting that it's still tethered to a bond it tried to sever but couldn't. So if you're feeling waves of unexpected emotion right now, it's not your imagination. It's them. It's the energy of a heart that's quietly reaching for yours. A soul that, no matter how far it wandered, never stopped calling out for a home. And beloved, while you sit in this silence wondering if they even think about you, they're out there whispering confessions they never thought they'd say out loud, because something inside them has snapped, but not in destruction, in surrender. They're no longer fighting what their heart has known all along. They're no longer defending the distance they once insisted on keeping. Yesterday, after that quiet confrontation with their loved one, your person couldn't sleep. They tossed and turned in their bed, revisiting memories they tried to bury. The way you used to laugh at things they barely noticed. The softness in your voice when you asked them how their day was. The way you looked at them when you thought they weren't watching. And for the first time in a long time, they let themselves feel the full weight of losing you. Not just missing you, but realizing they never truly let you go. And that's when the truth became undeniable. This wasn't just heartbreak, this was soul ache. There's a difference, you see. Heartbreak fades with time, distractions, new faces, but soul ache, it lingers. It calls, it pulls at them in the quietest moments. And your person has been carrying it like an invisible wound, smiling in front of others while internally screaming for the one person who actually knew them, you. They're realizing that no one else has reached the part of them that you did, not because others weren't kind, but because you didn't just see the version they showed the world, you saw through them, past the masks, past the bravado, into the tender, trembling core they kept hidden. And they're starting to accept a sacred truth. You weren't just a chapter, you were the book. And they've been trying to write new stories on pages that still echo your name. They thought time would dilute what you meant to them. They thought if they stayed away long enough, they'd forget, that they'd move on, that their life would find a new rhythm. But instead, every milestone has felt hollow, every celebration muted, every silence louder. And now, they're being asked by those closest to them, what are you still holding on to? And for the first time, they didn't deflect, they didn't deny, they just whispered your name and let the tears fall. Because what they're realizing is, you were never the mistake. You were the miracle. And they're haunted by the thought that they may have walked away from the only person who ever made them feel truly seen. So now the question isn't if they'll reach out, it's how. They want to come back different. Not just with apologies, but with growth. They want to show you they've changed. Not because they expect you to take them back, but because you deserve to know the truth. That they loved you then deeply, but now they respect you. They respect the way you let them go. They respect the silence you chose instead of begging. They respect the way you honored yourself, even when it broke your own heart. And that respect, it's birthing something new in them. A desire to come toward you, not as someone who needs saving, but as someone ready to walk beside you, equally, courageously, humbly. They're beginning to understand that what you shared wasn't just love, it was divinely timed alignment. And now the clock in their heart has struck a sacred hour. They're not just ready to remember, they're ready to return. And so, beloved, the moment they whispered your name, it was as if a spell broke in the room. Their family, those who had only heard fragments of your story, distorted versions, echoes of pain, and misunderstood silence, suddenly fell quiet. There was a shift in the energy, a weight that settled over the conversation like a fog of realization. One of them, perhaps a sibling or a cousin, leaned in and said the words that your person never expected to hear. Then why don't you go to them? It was simple, but it shattered the wall. Your person looked up, startled, almost afraid to answer, because that was the question they had buried beneath excuses, distractions, and fear. It was the question they asked themselves in their loneliest moments, but never dared to act on. Why don't I go to them? The truth? They thought you were better off without them. They thought you had already closed the chapter. They thought they had caused too much damage, waited too long, and become too different from the version you once held close. But now, that question has cracked open something they can't close again. Because in their heart, despite the silence, despite the distance, they know. You still feel them. There's a golden thread between your souls, stretched but never broken. And even if you don't speak it, your energy calls out to them every time they try to move on. And now that the door of truth has been cracked open, they can no longer pretend they don't hear your voice in the quietest moments of their day. So later that night, when the house went still and the stars hung heavy in the sky, your person stood outside, barefoot on the cold floor, phone in hand, staring at your name. Not to call, not yet, but just to remember, to feel, to listen. And in the silence, something stirred. A knowing, a pull, a divine urging that whispered, "This is your moment." They saw visions of your smile, of the day you met, of the silly inside jokes and quiet tears shared between you. And they finally admitted something to themselves. No one has ever made me feel what they did. No one has ever loved me that purely. And it broke them, not in pain, but in reverence, because they realized they had been loved by someone who understood their soul. And they had walked away from it because they were scared of their own depth. But they aren't the same anymore. That conversation with their family didn't just awaken memories, it awakened a mission. They now feel an inner commitment to prove, not to anyone else, but to you, that the person you saw inside them wasn't an illusion. That the version of them who could love deeply, show up fully, and walk this life beside you, that person is real, and they're rising to become that version now. Their actions are already shifting. They're avoiding the people who used to distract them. They've stopped responding to that third-party energy that once felt like a safety net. They're no longer seeking comfort in temporary arms. They're seeking truth. And that truth has one name: yours. So the next time you feel a strange heaviness in your chest, or you suddenly remember them at 2:47 a.m., or you hear a song that reminds you of a moment only you two shared, know this: it's not random, it's resonance. The soul is calling out to yours again, not through words, but through energy, through intention, through a promise they're making to themselves tonight. Next time I see them, I won't hesitate. Beloved soul, there are moments in life when the universe orchestrates events so perfectly that they feel almost unreal. Last night was one of those moments. It was not just another evening. It was a turning point, an invisible shift in the timeline of your connection. Imagine the weight of silence that had been building for months, maybe even years, suddenly cracking open like thunder after a long storm. The energy in that room was thick with memories, with unspoken words, with the kind of tension that only exists when someone is about to break free from the cage of their own fears. Because that's exactly what happened. The conversation that began casually with laughter and small talk slowly turned toward your name. It wasn't expected, but it was inevitable. Your person's family had sensed the change in them for a while. They'd noticed the distant looks, the quiet moments, the times when their eyes glazed over like they were somewhere else entirely. And last night, one brave voice finally asked, "Who is it you keep thinking about?" Your name slipped into the air like a secret no one was supposed to hear. And yet, once it was said, no one could take it back. The silence that followed was deafening. Even their brother, the one who usually teases or brushes off such things, leaned forward and asked for more. And your person, who had spent so long avoiding this truth, couldn't hold back anymore. They spoke, not with practiced lines or guarded words, but with the raw, trembling honesty of someone who has carried this weight for far too long. They said you were different. They said you were the only one who ever made them feel alive, truly alive, like they could finally stop pretending and just be themselves. They admitted that they've tried to move on. They've tried to bury your memory under distractions, responsibilities, and other faces. But nothing worked. Every time they tried to forget you, something divine pulled them back. And last night, they finally stopped fighting that pull. They told their family how your laughter still echoes in their mind, like music they can't stop hearing. How your presence used to make them feel safe, like home wasn't a place but a heartbeat, and that heartbeat was yours. And when they admitted that they still love you, their voice broke, not because they were weak, but because they were finally telling the truth. And truth always feels like breaking before it feels like healing. Their brother looked at them differently after that. Even the family members who had once doubted this connection, who thought it was just a passing phase, fell silent, because they could feel it too. They could feel the sincerity in every word. There's something about the kind of love that refuses to die. It carries a vibration that no one can ignore once it's spoken. And last night they felt it. They saw it in your person's eyes. They saw that this wasn't just a story from the past. It was the present, the future, the unshakable truth that no one could deny anymore. And do you know what happened after that? Your person stepped outside. The air was cool, the night sky heavy with stars, and they felt something they hadn't felt in a long time. Clarity. For the first time, they weren't ashamed of loving you. They weren't questioning whether it was right or wrong, whether it would work or not. They just knew. They knew that you are the one they want to find again, and as they stood there, breathing in the night, they whispered your name, not out of longing, but out of recognition. They whispered it like a prayer, like an anchor to keep them steady as they faced the tidal wave of emotions that had just been released. They thought of you, of all the times you showed up for them when no one else did, of how you loved them in ways they didn't even know they needed, of how your presence felt like sunlight breaking through their darkest days. And they realized something that shook them to their core. They never truly let you go, not even for a second. They've been carrying you in their heart all this time, even when they tried to convince themselves otherwise. And now, after last night, they can't run from it anymore. They don't want to. That conversation with their family changed everything. It wasn't just about defending you. It was about owning the truth. It was about saying, this is who I love. This is who I want. And once that truth was spoken, it became impossible to go back to the way things were. They felt lighter, like a burden had been lifted. But they also felt something else, an urgency. Because now that the truth is out, they know they can't just sit still and hope things will work themselves out. They have to move. They have to act. And that's why their energy is reaching you so strongly right now. You can feel it, can't you? The restless pull in your chest, the sudden memories that surface out of nowhere, the dreams that feel more like messages than random thoughts. It's all connected because their soul is reaching for you, calling out in a way that no distance can silence. Last night, after the house went quiet and everyone went to bed, your person sat alone in the dark. They scrolled through old photos, old messages, pieces of you they've kept hidden like sacred treasures. And for the first time in a long time, they let themselves feel it all. The love, the regret, the longing, the hope. They didn't push it away. They didn't distract themselves. They just sat there, holding your memory close like it was the only thing keeping them alive. And in that stillness, they made a promise to themselves that the next time they have the chance, they will not stay silent. They will not let fear win. They will tell you everything. All the things they never said, all the emotions they buried, all the ways they tried to pretend they didn't care, because the truth is they care more than they've ever cared about anything in their life. And they're finally ready to admit it, not just to themselves, but to you. Beloved, the energy between you is changing. You may not see it yet, but you can feel it. The angels are aligning, this connection, removing obstacles, softening hearts, and opening doors that were once closed. And the reason you're hearing this message right now is because you need to prepare yourself, not for disappointment, but for fulfillment. You need to open your heart, not to the old story, but to the new one that's about to begin. This time, it's not going to be built on fear or misunderstanding. It's going to be built on truth, on clarity, on the kind of love that stands tall even when the world doesn't understand it. And your person, oh beloved, they're ready to stand. They're ready to choose you, not because they feel pressured or lonely, but because they finally understand that you are not just someone they loved, you are the one their soul recognizes as home. And once the soul finds home, nothing else feels right. That's why they've been restless. That's why they've been quiet, but watching, listening, feeling. They've been gathering the courage to step forward, to close the gap, to face you not as the broken version of themselves who left, but as the healed version who wants to stay. And when they do, you will feel it in every word, every look, every trembling touch. They won't need to convince you. You'll just know. Because the love that's coming now is not about chasing or proving. It's about alignment. It's about two souls meeting each other fully, without the masks, without the fear, without the endless what-ifs that once stood in the way. And here's the most powerful part of all. Their family now sees it too. They may not fully understand it, but they can't deny it. They saw the way your person's eyes lit up when they spoke your name. They saw the emotion in their voice, the way their entire energy shifted when they talked about you. And deep down, even the ones who once resisted are starting to realize, this love is not going anywhere. It's too strong, too sacred, too divinely protected. You might not know this yet, but after that conversation, something shifted in their home. People who once tried to control your person are now stepping back, giving them space to figure things out. Someone in their family even said, if this is what your heart wants, then follow it. And those words hit your person like a blessing, because for the first time, they felt like they weren't fighting alone. They felt like the universe was finally clearing the path for them to find their way back to you, and they will. Not in haste, not in confusion, but in divine timing. And beloved, that timing is closer than you think. Even now, as you listen to these words, the energy is moving, the universe is aligning, and soon you will see the signs, the unexpected message, the dream that feels too real to ignore, the sudden wave of emotion that washes over you when you least expect it. These are not coincidences. These are the whispers of destiny calling you closer to what is already yours. So take a deep breath, dear soul. Let the doubts fade. Let the fear dissolve. Because the love you thought was lost is finding its way back to you. And when it does, it will not be the same as before. It will be stronger, purer, unshakable, and you, beloved, will finally see what the angels have been trying to show you all along. The true love is not about timing or distance or perfection. It's about recognition. It's about two souls finding each other again and again, no matter how many lifetimes or lessons it takes. And this time, they are ready to stand before you, ready to choose you, ready to love you, not in whispers, but in the full, blazing light of truth. This is your sign. It's happening. The shift is real. And soon, the silence will break into something beautiful, something that will make every moment of waiting, every tear, every prayer, worth it. And now, beloved soul, take a moment, not to think, not to overanalyze, but simply to feel. Because what's rising in your spirit right now is not confusion. It's clarity. It's the whisper of everything your heart has known all along, finally being echoed by the universe around you. There is a sacred calm settling over your life, and even though the past may still ache in hidden corners, what's ahead is not a repeat of before, it's a rebirth. Because the person you once loved, in silence, in dreams, in distant hope, is no longer running from their truth. They're walking toward it. They're walking toward you. And that truth, it has a name. It's you. Not the version of you who doubted their worth. Not the version of you who waited in quiet agony, wondering if you were forgotten. No, this time they see you for who you truly are. The light that never gave up on them. The soul who loved them even through their silence. The heart that kept beating in sync with theirs, even across dimensions. They are not coming back as the same person who left. This is not about returning to old cycles. This is about finally stepping into the promise of something deeper, wiser, more aligned with divine timing. Because what you both had was never ordinary. That's why it never fit inside the walls of logic or social norms. It was spiritual, it was soul deep, and now it's becoming sacred again. Your angels are surrounding you now, not just as guardians, but as witnesses. Because what's coming into your life is the result of all the inner work. The tears cried in silence, the prayers whispered into pillows, the faith you held when there was no sign at all. Heaven watched, and heaven responded, and maybe, just maybe, this is your reward. So, beloved, be soft with yourself now. Breathe gently. You've carried so much. You've loved so purely. And you've waited, not in weakness, but in devotion. That devotion has not gone unnoticed. It has stirred the hearts of those around your person. It has softened the very souls who once resisted this connection. And now the door is open. What you do next is not about chasing. It's not about allow the healing to meet you. Allow the truth to be spoken. Allow the truth to be spoken. Allow the love to land fully into your open hands. Because you don't have to prove yourself anymore. You are not being tested. You are being restored. And your person, they are on their way. In ways you cannot see, in steps you may not hear, they are being led back, not by guilt, not by force, but by the pull of truth. So if your heart felt something stir during this message, that was no accident. That was the echo of their soul, already speaking to yours. And now, before we close, if these words wrapped around your heart like light in the middle of your storm, if this message brought you peace, clarity, or a quiet sense of hope, let it be known. Like this video so more souls can feel this warmth. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss the divine timing of your next message. Share your heart in the comments. Tell us what resonated, what you're healing through, or what sign you're waiting for. We read every word. And if you feel called to bless this sacred space with a small offering of love, a super thanks is always cherished. Your kindness helps keep these angel messages flowing to others still searching in silence. Because this is more than a channel. It's a soul family. And you are home here. May the angels cradle you tonight. May clarity cover your path. And may the next message you hear be theirs. Until then, stay open, stay soft, and stay ready, because love is already on the way.